Internet, and today's video is going to be another book opinion. This book opinion is going to be on Neil Gaiman's Stardust. Now, I want it to be known that Stardust is also a film, and I did watch the film before I read the book. Now, Stardust follows along the normal Neil Gaiman traits, where it gives you enough information that you can enjoy the story, but not too much information that you fully understand the world. So by the end of the book, you understand that you had a very good time, but you also leave it having a couple questions about the world building, the world context. That's why I call him a fairy tale styled author. Stardust did not diverge from this style of writing in the least. Stardust was also my least favorite Neil Gaiman book that I have read so far, and I admit that my bias against this book might be based on my love for the movie and my enjoyment of the movie, because they have two different tones to them. So now let's get into the basic summary of Stardust. So Stardust follows the story of Tristan. Tristan lives in this small town called Wall. Wall is named after a dividing border of a wall between their small town that's a part of the rest of Europe and London, and this magical place on the other side. Now, I don't know the systematics of how powerful this wall boundary is, but supposedly on the side where the town of Wall lives, we have the normal science and unmagical things, but if you cross that border onto the magical side, all of a sudden you have witches and magic and all sorts of weird, magical, fantastical things. So those live on one side, Wall lives on the other side, but it doesn't seem like these are parallel worlds. It seems like they both exist in the same place, but different land masses go under different borders of magic, and different rules apply to these different land masses. See, this is where I get into, it's never fully explained in the book. You're just sort of like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense, and you continue reading, but at the end of the book, you're like, that was not explained. I don't understand how I understood what was going on. So, point is, Tristan lives on the unmagical side of the wall, and he is trying to court a woman called Victoria. They witness a shooting star fall down on the other side of the wall, and he gets Victoria to promise that if he can fetch the shooting star, bring it back to her, that he will get her hand in marriage. So Tristan starts on this journey. He crosses the wall, and he's in search of the star. When he finds the star, he finds out that the star is not a little rock like it would be on his side of the wall, but it is actually a human woman named Yvain. And again, this is where I'm confused on whether or not on one half the stars in the sky are just like women sitting casually in chairs before they get knocked over, or they're like bright beams of light, but then if they get hit out of the sky and end up on this side of the wall, they turn into a humanoid creature. Didn't make much sense, never was fully explained, but you get enough information to kind of know, yeah, it happened. Like, you don't need to understand how the remote works, you just need to know it works when you put batteries in it. So, this is the basic plot summary of this book. Tristan crosses to the magical side of the wall, he's in search of a star, he finds the star, and we have an adventure of him trying to get this star back to his one true love. Now, the most interesting thing that happens in this book are the old hags that are trying to get the star as well. Other than that, there's nothing really overly exciting about this book. The biggest part of this book is the kind of chase on the adventure that is happening between Tristan and Yvain versus the old hags that are trying to eat Yvain for some reason. Overall, this is the book where I had too much contention with that fairy tale style. I would have liked more explanation as to why the world was working as it was working. I also was dissatisfied because of the tonal shift that is in the movie versus the tonal shift that is in the book. The book is just very, I can't explain it. The best explanation I can give for this tonal shift is the very end of the book. And this isn't really a big spoiler, but if you would prefer to skip it, I'm of course not holding you hostage that you have to listen. But in the end of the book, while the two end up together, Tristan and Yvain, like you already knew was going to happen, it's hinted that Yvain is a star still. Even though she has human form and she fell, she is still a star, so she has a abnormally long life. So Tristan dies. They have their happy life together, but Tristan dies, and Yvain is sentenced to live on for eternities. So I don't know if she's supposed to combust like magically one day like stars tend to do, or if she just like blows up, if she just falls over dead, what happens to her that causes her to die. But I know that she's going to end up living for like millennia without Tristan, because she's basically an immortal bitch and won't die. So that was just really downing and depressing, because instead of ending on that happy note, okay, these two found love, they're together, they're going to be happy forever. Instead, you end on the note, yeah, Tristan died, and the woman that, like, he loved, she's just gonna live on forever with, like, no one else in her life. Like, she's gonna be alone for the rest of her life, which I don't know if she feels down about that, because we really never understand how a star feels. Maybe since she's a star, she's not bothered by the idea of being without Tristan. But I'm not sure, and that was just a really downer. While in the movie, it ends with them being together, and you don't have to like think about what happens afterwards. And while I don't need a story to have a happy ending to enjoy it, I don't need it perfectly wrapped up and concluded. For the context of this story, I would have preferred it, because the whole story was just a story about a young boy becoming a man, coming to age, and finding the love of his life. I did not need to go into the depressing realities of your wife is gonna die, or you're going to die, or the happy ending really isn't a happy ending for everyone sort of situation. I just needed two people to fall in love, them to come together, and them to be together by the end of the story. However, the novel did not provide that, because the moment it gave it to you, a rock came crushing down the hill and destroyed the dawn of two people riding away on the horse, if that made any sense. The novel just had to ruin that perfect ambiance of happiness with a depressing note of they're not going to die happily together in their sleep. Instead, one is going to live on for several more centuries by herself. And that was just, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going on about it. It was just a downer, okay? It was a downer, and I didn't like it. Another thing about this book that was kind of unnecessary is, while I do like when Neil Gaiman adds stories not related to the main character, this book does not start with Tristan and his story. It actually starts with the conception of Tristan, which in the long run is important, because it's important to know Tristan's bloodline. It was overly long for me to have like a whole chapter or 2 chapters just talking about Tristan's father and how he had sex with some woman for the first time. Like, I did not need to know that. Like, that was unnecessary in the long run, even if I guess it was sort of helpful. So there's things like that. In the end, I really just can't say anything more than I liked the tone of the movie, which had a happier, more lighthearted feel to it, versus the tone of the book, which was at times trying to be unnecessarily dark about situations. The movie tried to be comedic in situations that, while grim, came across as more comedic and therefore funny, while the book tried to keep those grim things grim, when really they came across better when they were fun and lighthearted, even if in reality they were grim situations. I don't know if that makes much sense. Point is, this is the one case I will say I like the movie over the book. I guess that has a lot to do with, like, I've heard often when it comes to, like, movie theory, that the last scene of a movie that you watch gives the audience what they will say about it. So if the last scene of your movie is very impactful and good, it doesn't really matter that the first half of your movie was so-so, because the audience will leave thinking of that impactful ending. The same for if the first half of your movie was really, really good, but your last act of the movie was pretty poor, then the audience will leave having a poor idea of your movie and thinking poorly of your movie. That was how I felt about this book. The majority of this book was pretty decently done. There wasn't too much I could say against it, other than I wish Neil Gaiman did focus on explanation of the science of a world before he just started throwing stuff at you, because it would have saved me a lot of last page questions. But also that the end scene of this book was more depressing than happy, and that just made me feel depressed about the whole book in whole, even if the whole book was relatively happy and a fun adventure that you could have along with Tristan and Yvain. So that is my opinion on Stardust. Comment down below if you have either read the book or watched the movie, or if you've done both and which one you prefer. Also, if you're familiar with Neil Gaiman's writing and how you feel about him always leaving out the world science. I guess that's my best explanation. The reasons why the world works as it does, or going more in depth. Like, are you bothered by it, or are you okay with it? I'm on the fence. In this one, I was bothered by it. In, say, American Gods and Coraline, I was perfectly okay with the fact that I was left with questions. So what are your opinions on that? If you like what you're seeing here, you want to continue seeing more, you click all the bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.